Story time on how I was almost kidnapped. Okay, you guys, so today's story is my own. Let's get into it. Okay, so boom. I was in the 9th grade when this happened, and my brother was in the 12th. We always took a bus to a bus stop that was 5 minutes away from our house, and we walked the rest of the way home. I had super strict parents, so I didn't have a cell phone. This detail comes into play later on. So on this particular day, our routine changed. My brother had to complete some community service hours, so we were going to separate. I was going to go home, and my brother was going to go the opposite direction to the daycare that was also 5 minutes away from the bus stop. The bus dropped us off, and before my brother walked away, he told me to be careful, and I was like, yeah, thinking this was going to be a regular walk home. But I was definitely wrong about that. About 3 minutes into me walking, when my brother was no longer in sight, a car slowly pulls up next to me and puts his window down. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I was almost kidnapped. Okay, so I'm walking home alone and my brother is no longer in sight and the streets are kind of empty. A car slowly pulls up next to me and a guy puts his window down. A man who looks like he's in his 40s yells out, "Hello, beautiful." I kept walking and ignoring him, and he got louder, and now he's following me in the same pace as I'm walking with his car. "Hey, what's your name?" That's what he yelled, but he said it so loud that it scared me and I started walking even faster. He drives up next to me again and leans over to the passenger seat to try to open the door and told me to get in. At this point, I'm jogging, so he parked his car and started jogging right after me. I full-blown started running, and guess what he did? He went back into his car and started driving to me. At this point, I'm 30 seconds away from my house and I don't want to go there so he knows where I live. So I go to the gas station and he follows me. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how I was almost kidnapped. So like I said, I started running and he got back into his car, and I was 30 seconds away from my house, so I didn't want him to know where I lived, so I ran to the gas station and he followed me. So now I'm in the gas station acting like I'm buying something, and this guy literally parked his car and walks inside and comes right up to me. He then says, "Hello, beautiful, what's your name?" I don't know why I answered. I just was scared, so I said my name was Victoria, which is not, it's Valerie, but I said Victoria. Then he grabs my arm and says, "Victoria, you're coming home with me tonight." He starts to squeeze my arm and grips it really tight. Y'all, I was so scared. I don't even know why I didn't scream. I was just like in fear. But I'll be damned if this man was gonna take me home. He whispered in my ear to walk to the car, and at that moment I screamed to the cashier. Like for part 4. Part 4 on how I was almost kidnapped. So like I said, he told me to walk to the car, and at that moment, I screamed to the cashier. "He's squeezing my hand and he's trying to take me." All the cashier did was look up and said, "What's going on?" And that man ran to his car. I'm talking about bolted. He was gone, flash. I stayed with the gas station lady for about 30 minutes after that because I was so scared to walk home. And then eventually a nurse that was also in the gas station who was waiting with me walked me home. I'm still grateful for that nurse till this day. Thankfully, that was a gas station that was close to our house, and my family always went there, so they knew all of us. The gas station lady told my family what happened, and they got me a phone the very next day. And now my brother always walked me home first before going to go do his community service hours. It's crazy because that was the very first time I walked home alone and something happened. Even if you think you're good, be careful because you never can know what happens. Be safe out there, guys. Story time on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. Okay, so boom. My mom and my dad had been together for 14 years up until this point. And my mom was actually pregnant with my soon-to-be little sister. My mom and my dad almost never argued. They had a pretty solid relationship, or so I thought. And my mom was very close to her twin sister for obvious reasons. I mean, they're twins. Well, one day when my parents was at work, I decided to skip school with my friends and go to the movie theaters instead. But I needed some money. So I was planning on going home to get money out of my mom's purse since she never noticed when I took anything. I assumed the house was empty because I was usually the first one home, then my mom, then my dad. Remember that because that's important for later on in the story. Y'all, I ran into the house and I went straight for my parents' room. I mean, I was loud. I didn't hear any moaning, y'all. Guess he was doing a bad job. But anyways, I opened that door and there it was. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I opened the door into the room and there it was. My dad and my mom's sister literally staring at me in shock. I closed that door so fast and ran to my room, I didn't even give him a chance to react. Y'all, I didn't even realize that wasn't my mom. Don't worry though, because I eventually did. Stick with me. But yeah, I was panicking on how I was going to explain why I skipped school and that I just walked in on them. I was waiting for them to come talk to to me, but they never did. About 4 hours later, my real mom came home and screamed that she got food for us. Now remember what I said, I'm usually the first home, then my mom, then my dad. So my mom only bought food for me and her, assuming that her husband wasn't gonna be home till later. So anyways, I went downstairs and told my mom sorry about earlier. She was confused and said what happened earlier. And this is when it got real, y'all. Life for part 3. Part 3 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I told my mom I'm sorry about what happened earlier, and she said, what happened earlier? Y'all, my stupid ass. I really thought that was my mom's way of trying to act like nothing ever happened. So I just laughed. But then I said, where's dad's food? Then my mom said, you know he doesn't come home from work till later, so the food was spoiled by then. Y'all, at that very moment, it hit me. I realized that when I opened the door for that split second, I didn't see my mom have a pregnant belly. So out of nowhere, I made that, oh my gosh, I just realized something noise. You know that noise. It goes like this. So my mom's still confused, asking, what's wrong? I said, Mom, were you here earlier? She said, of course not, honey. I was at work the whole day. I screamed, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad is cheating on you with Lily. My mom immediately stopped eating. Like for part 4. Part 4 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I screamed, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad is cheating on you with Lily. Then my mom immediately stopped eating. My mom looked at me so serious and said, what are you talking about? Then I explained everything to her. The anger my mom had is just something I can't explain. Let me remind you that my mom is pregnant and she's finding out that her husband is cheating on her with her twin sister while pregnant, and she's finding out by her daughter. My dad was a dead man. Once he came home, his life fell apart. He cried and begged my mom not to leave him, but nope, she divorced him and took him for everything he got, might I add. My mom couldn't even look at her sister, so their relationship was never the same. And it doesn't help that my mom slept with her boyfriend a year later. My mom is pet at tea. I still got to see my dad, but I always have that scene in the back of my head. But hey, I never got in trouble for ditching school, so it all worked out. Story time on how a black 15-year-old girl refused to give up her seat to a white woman. And no, this is not the story of Rosa Parks. It is the story of Claudette Colvin, and she actually gave up her seat 9 months before Rosa Parks. Claudette lived in Montgomery, Alabama, where at the time they tried to keep black people in their place. But that didn't faze Miss Claudette. She was angered by the case of Jeremiah Reeves, an older classmate at Booker T. Washington High School, who was indicted in 1952 and later executed for allegedly raping a white woman. Because of this, she went on to join the NAACP Youth Council and took to flaunting her natural hair in defiance of the pressure to have it straightened. On March 2nd of 1955, Claudette was riding the bus home from school when the driver ordered her and her classmates to vacate a row of seats to accommodate one white woman, but she refused. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how a 15-year-old black girl refused to give up her seat to a white woman. So like I said, the bus driver ordered Claudette and her classmates to vacate a row of seats to accommodate one white woman. All 3 of her classmates got up, but Claudette did not budge. She refused and said she knew her constitutional rights. They responded by roughly yanking her off of the bus, handcuffing her, and placing her in a cell. Claudette cried and prayed until her mother and pastor came a few hours later to bail her out. Claudette caught the attention of local black leaders who helped her get legal representation that led to most of her charges getting dropped. The leaders wanted to use her as an example as justification for a citywide bus boycott, but they thought she was too young and emotional. When it was revealed that Claudette had been impregnated by an older man later that summer, it confirmed their sentiment. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how a black 15-year-old girl refused to give up her seat to a white woman. So like I said, once they found out that Claudette was pregnant by an older man, they said that she was the wrong person for the movement. The right person arrived 9 months later when Rosa Parks, a 42-year-old seamstress and NAACP secretary, made headlines for her arrest on December 1st, prompting the launch of the Montgomery bus boycott the following day and the national rise of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. With all that being said, Claudette sparked legal action that led to the end of Alabama's segregated bus laws and enabled a widespread civil rights movement to pick up steam. A big thanks to Miss Claudette Colvin. Story time on how I sent my nudes to my dad. I'm talking full, clear, tunnel vision to my cat child. Just know this story ends with me getting my behind beat. So I was 17 at the time, and I had a boyfriend who was also 17, and we've been together for 1 year. We were in the same grade, but we always had different classes, so I usually seen him during lunch. My parents were super strict and religious, so we had to keep our relationship on the low. So my boyfriend always asked me to send him nudes, but I never had the guts to send it to him. One day over the phone, me and my boyfriend had a heart-to-heart, and he told me that he would never break my trust and that I can trust him with everything. So I decided I was going to surprise him for his birthday and send him the you-know. The night before his birthday, I decided I was going to send him the nudes exactly at 12 a.m. Biggest mistake ever. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I sent my nudes to my dad. Like I said, I decided to surprise my boyfriend with the you-know for his birthday. When the clock struck midnight was when exactly I was going to send the pictures and wish him a happy birthday. On my phone, my boyfriend name was David with a red heart emoji, and my dad was under dad with the 2 pink heart emojis. 2 very different contacts, but at the same time, way too close. I took the pictures with nothing on. I'm talking full birthday suit. I bent down in front of that mirror, legs wide open, and one in a bed with my selfie stick. I was literally so anxious that I didn't even realize what happened. When I went to go text my boyfriend, my dad texted me. I thought I just swiped up the message to get it out my way, but instead I hit the message. So once I hit the message, it switched me from texting my boyfriend to texting my dad. If you have an iPhone, you know exactly what I mean. But anyways, I didn't realize that I was texting my dad, so I went and sent the nudes. Once I found out, I literally wanted to die. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how I sent my nudes to my dad. Like I said, I hit my dad's message by mistake and ended up sending the pictures to him. I still didn't realize I texted my dad, so I just threw my phone on the bed, anxiously waiting for my boyfriend's reply. 2.5 seconds later, my dad barges into the house and is literally screaming at the top of his lungs. I was actually confused until my dad said, "Why would you disrespect your body like that?" Once I realized everything, it was already too late. I got the beating of my lifetime and my phone was taken away, but only for like a week because of safety purposes. When I went to school, I explained everything to my boyfriend and he was so shocked. He did say he appreciated even the attempt. I eventually took nudes directly on my boyfriend's phone, and we're still currently together. But for the rest of my school year, I had to deal with even more strict parents. Watch who you text, guys. Story time on how I had a one-night stand with my Uber driver and my girlfriend heard the whole thing. Okay, so a quick rundown on how we got here. It was a girls' night with me and my friends while we vacationed in Miami. We only had 3 days in Miami and we were on day 2. So the next day, I literally had to catch my flight and get back to Kentucky. Anyways, we went to a club in Miami called Story and it was lit. And Tory Lanez just happened to be performing that night. Child, I got a little too lit. My girls was there for me, of course, but I ended up throwing up in the girls' bathroom and my friends had to be there for me. It was time for me to go. I didn't want to ruin my friend's night, so I told them that I would meet them at the hotel and I would just Uber home. They were so against it, but I reassured them that I would be fine and that I wasn't as drunk as they thought. I told them that I would keep one of them on the phone with me and that I would put my location on. And we all agreed. And this is where it gets crazy. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I had a one-night stand with my Uber driver and my girlfriend heard the whole thing. So like I said, me and my friends agreed that I would Uber home, call one of them, and share my location. So my Uber gets here and my friends walk me to the car and then they go back into the club. And this is where it goes down. So I called one of my friends, let's call her Jess, and she just stayed on the phone with me and told me not to hang up. All of a sudden, my girlfriend back in Kentucky gave me a call. So I told my friend Jess that I would call her back. At the time, me and my girlfriend had issues, so I didn't really want to stay on the phone with her, so I told her that I would call her back. When I hung up, instead of calling my friend Jessica back, I just called my girlfriend back again. Now, me thinking I called my friend Jess back, I put the phone down and laid my head on the door, not paying attention whatsoever to who I actually just called. Then my Uber driver said, "Wow, you have great friends." I looked up for the first time to see a fine, sexy man staring at me. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how I had a one-night stand with my Uber driver and my girlfriend heard the whole thing. Like I said, I looked up and seen a fine, sexy Uber driver staring back at me. Mind you, I don't even know that I'm on the phone with my girlfriend. We had small talk on how I had great friends, and then I eventually asked him how much he made off of Uber. Child, he said, "Enough to take you out." I just smiled and said, "Unfortunately, my flight leaves tomorrow." So now we're in front of the hotel, but I don't want to get out. I don't know if it was the lick in my system, but I was trying to get laid. I was kind of in that whatever happens in Miami stays in Miami type of vibe. But again, didn't know my girlfriend was literally on my phone listening to everything. I was so sick of my girlfriend's BS, so I just wanted to have fun. So I told him, come back here, I don't bite. He replied he wants to, but maybe if I wasn't as lit. Then I said, oh, you must be scared. He came to the back and said, scared of what? And it went down like for part 4. Part 5 on how I had a one-night stand with my Uber driver and my girlfriend heard the whole thing. But like I said, my girlfriend blocked me on everything and my flight back home was literally anxiety attacks. When I got off of my flight, literally everyone from my high school was talking.
Story time about how I caught my aunt and boyfriend hooking up at a family function. That's gross. So as always, a little background information. Every year since my mom and stepdad were together, they would throw these Christmas parties. And everyone on both sides of the family would come to these. Anyways, like I said, everybody on both sides of the family would come to these Christmas parties. Even though everybody would just come to these things to talk shit on each other. I was really excited because this was the first year that I was allowed to invite my boyfriend to a family function. Let me tell you a little backstory on why he wasn't allowed to come to any of the family functions before this. So one of my cousins, she would literally like have a new boyfriend every single year, right? And eventually my mom got fed up with it because every year she was buying gifts for a new guy. So she was like, oh, you're not gonna be like Kels and have a new boyfriend at every single family event, you know, because we're the same person. Sis, really? So yeah, I was super excited about this. And by the way, my boyfriend and I had been dating for like 2 years. Our 2-year anniversary was actually 5 days after this Christmas party. Anyways, we were both juniors in high school. So, you know, the party's going good at first. All the adults are getting drunk and all the little kids are playing on their iPads. And thankfully, my boyfriend was getting along with all of my family. I didn't think there would be a problem with that because my family is very judgmental. And I mean in a way where they judge you off of how much money you have. Even though none of them have enough money to be judging people off of that, but you know. So pretty much I just mean that my family is full of assholes. I know some of us can relate to that. So we all sit down to dinner and one of my aunts is extremely drunk. Like this girl could not hold her head up at the dinner table. Embarrassing. Anyway, she is sitting on the other side of my boyfriend, talking to him most of the time, not really paying attention to anybody else, even though everybody is trying to talk to her because she just announced on Facebook that she was pregnant. So I'm getting like sus vibes, but then again, I have to remember that she's drunk. Yes, she was drinking when she was pregnant, and nobody said anything to her. What a surprise. So like I said, I thought that was a little sus, but I brushed it off because she was just drunk. Well, after dinner, my mom told me that it was my year to help do the dishes, even though she said that every year. So I help her clean up the dishes before we do presents. And I look over to see what my boyfriend is doing, and what do you know? He is talking to my aunt again. This time, they are way too close to each other, and she's being super touchy with him. Giving me very much pedo vibes. And I guess low-key my mom notices too, because she kind of did that thing where you kind of nudge someone and then you go, yeah, she did that. So my mom was catching on to things pretty quick. Quicker than I was. So yeah, they're both being pretty sus at this point. Well, after I'm done doing the dishes, I walk over and I ask him like, hey, what were you guys talking about? You know, like she's really drunk right now. And he says, yeah, she's like really drunk. Mind you, they also let my boyfriend drink. Why? I don't know. I wasn't allowed to drink though. How fair is that? I had a pretty rough night. But yeah, no, he goes, yeah, she's pretty drunk, but I am too. And I'm like, okay, what were you guys talking about though? He was like, well, I could have swore that she tried to grab my junk. Now me, because she is part of my family, I'm like, that's not true. You know, like, so I had said to him, maybe she's just really drunk. Maybe she just fell over, you know. He goes, yeah, you're probably right. Mind you, when I say my aunt was drunk, like she showed up obliterated and she was still drinking at the party. So once again, I couldn't keep an eye on either of them because I was Santa's little helper, which meant I had to pass out all the gifts to everyone. I swear, at this point, the family was just taking advantage of me. So while I'm being Santa's little helper, my boyfriend had asked me if he could go and get a charger out of my room because it's like 11 o'clock. He's supposed to go home soon. So I just tell him to go upstairs and get one himself. Also, my boyfriend and I weren't allowed alone up in my room. So he goes upstairs, goes to grab a charger, and weirdly enough, my aunt, trotting behind him, says, "I need to throw up." Now, instead of using the bathroom downstairs, which was there for a reason, for guests, when she's going up the stairs, I'm like, oh, like, you can use the bathroom down here. She's like, no, I would feel comfortable if I was up in your parents' room. So she goes upstairs to my parents' room and yaks up there. This Christmas party is like a fucking circus at this point, I swear. And while I'm handing out gifts, I just happen to look over at my boyfriend's book bag that is sitting right by the couch, and I see a phone charger sticking right out of it. How weird, right? That sounds a little weird to me. So 10 minutes goes by, I'm still sitting there handing out gifts, and my mom pulls me aside and says, hey, I want you to go upstairs and check on them. And she just gives me this look, and I know exactly what this look is. It's the look of they better not be up there doing something they're not supposed to be doing. So I walk upstairs, and right whenever you walk upstairs, there's my mom's bedroom right in front of the stairs. The door is open, and I walk in, and the bathroom door is wide open. Nobody's in there. It looked like nobody had been in there because my mom's clothes from earlier were still sitting on the bathroom toilet. So then if you walk out of my mom's room to the left, you go all the way down the hall, there's my room. Well, I'm walking down the hall and I walk into my bedroom. My bed is on the right. I see my aunt and my boyfriend hooking up on my bed. Yup. So at this point, I'm literally just in shock. I am literally staring, watching my boyfriend and my aunt make out on my freaking bed. Like, they didn't even bother to shut the door. Really? So after that, I make that sound where you go, my aunt, her eyes are bloodshot. My boyfriend's just looking at me like, oh, I effed up really bad. Like, yeah, you did. After my aunt stares at me for about 2 minutes straight, she goes, you want to join? This is really sounding like some Alabama type shit. No offense if you live in Alabama, but you know what I mean. So after she asked me that very weird and disturbing question, I start screaming, and then I hear multiple footsteps running up the stairs, and next thing I know, my mother pushes me out of the way. She starts going off on everybody there. Every single person in that room got the wrath of my mother that night. And behind my mother, the whole family is just like crowded up in this small ass hallway trying to see what the tea is. The tea is your family's a bunch of weirdos, and I just found my non-biological aunt hooking up with my boyfriend. By the way, my aunt was like 28 years old. It was on my stepdad's side, thank God, because if it was on my actual side, that would have been very freaking weird. But like I said, my mother starts going off on everybody, and my aunt's husband was there, of course. He starts going off on my boyfriend. Now, I know he wasn't in the right, but how are you gonna blame a kid? Maybe you should check your wife who's drinking while she's pregnant. That sounds like the logical answer here, you know? So my stepdad drags my aunt out of the room and starts screaming at her and his brother. If you don't get the correlation there, my aunt is married to my stepdad's brother. I just know that some people have some questions about it, so I thought I would throw it out there. Anyways, like I said, he literally drags her out of the room, like grabs her by her arm, drags her off the bed, tells her to put her fucking clothes on and get her ass outside. So my beautiful mother, she decides that she's gonna call the cops. Woo! She was not playing that night. Low-key, I'm pretty sure she had something against my aunt anyways, because she always said that she had a feeling that she was flirting with my stepdad. Gross, right? Yes. So she gets on the phone with the police. She tells them that there's a grown woman touching a minor in her house. So the police show up. My mom is dealing with that whole situation. I'm currently screaming at my boyfriend. The one thing that I will thank my boyfriend for is the cops had asked why he was drinking, and he had told them that my aunt was sneaking him drinks the whole night. Of course, she said that wasn't true, but she was already obliterated. They just weren't believing her. So after my aunt leaves, everybody's pretty much gone at this point, because when I tell you my mom went off on my whole stepdad side of the family, she went off. Like, she was calling everybody out on their shit, which I low-key felt bad, but at the same time, my mom's a bad bitch. Period. That's all I can say. She tells it like it is. So like I said, after everybody left, it was pretty much just me, my family, and my boyfriend. My boyfriend and I were now downstairs because the cops came and they wanted to talk to him, blah, 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 blah. So I had officially moved from screaming at him upstairs to now downstairs. And my mom was pretty much just letting me go at it. She did not care. But after my mom had called the police, she called his parents too to let them know what was going on. So the only reason why he didn't leave yet was because his parents wanted to come over and talk to my parents. So about 30 minutes later, his parents show up and they're talking to my parents, and my mom pretty much just goes, "I'm so sorry," like telling her how much of a train wreck my aunt was and that she had never done that before, so it was a surprise. And we had one of those like Amazon ring things like on the outside of our door. So before they walked out the door, I went on the camera to see, you know, if I could hear them say anything whenever they walked outside. And they walk out and his dad says, "I'm not mad at you, kid." He's like, "I'm mad that you got caught." Like, come on. I know it's your son, but at the same time, like, anyways, so the cousins that were at this Christmas party, they went to my high school and they pretty much were telling everybody. So the whole school pretty much knew that my boyfriend cheated on me with my aunt. Like, that's embarrassing. But not only did that get around the school, my mom had told me like a week later that apparently they were seeing each other. Yeah, we love that for them, I guess. So after that, I have my ex-boyfriend blocked, and the one day he comes over to my house and asks to talk to me. My mom wasn't home at the time. She was at work. Good thing she wasn't home because she probably would have punched him in the face. But I let him in, we start talking, and he goes, "I just want you to hear it from me first. The rumors are true." I just don't get men. Like, what? Your aunt is in the middle of filing for divorce. So yeah, my aunt files for divorce. She gets with my ex-boyfriend who had just turned 18 at the time. And let me tell you guys the worst part about this. My stepdad's brother was still in love with this girl, so when they would have family events on that side of the family, he would literally let her bring my ex-boyfriend. Well, I mean, they did have a kid together, so I could see how that would, you know, kind of... Actually, no, I don't. Just take the kid. You don't have to invite my ex-boyfriend. So yes, I've had to see my ex-boyfriend at multiple family events on that side of the family. And I was forced to go because my mother did not want to be there by herself. She wouldn't really be there by herself, but she just needed me by her side so that way she didn't look like an idiot, I guess.